So now that we've had a couple days to process what happened, my unpopular opinion is that Najib is as much a victim of the whole 1MDB scandal as the rest of us are, and let me explain what I mean. So, the High Court just found him guilty on 4 charges of abuse of power and 21 charges of money laundering, all to do with him basically stealing over 2.3 billion ringgit of public funds from 1MDB. And the problem is, I feel like there's more than one way you could look at this. So, for example, on the one hand, yes, you could look at this as Najib abusing his power as finance minister to steal all of that money. Because, according to the judge, Najib basically ordered officials at the Ministry of Finance to take immediate actions without any due diligence. He gave the board of 1MDB binding orders to allow the transfer of funds from 1MDB over to Jolo's accounts, which then made its way over to his personal one. He made it so that any instruction that came from Jolo should be treated as coming from the finance minister himself. But on the other hand, you could also see these as examples of entire groups of people allowing him to get away with everything he was doing, because ultimately it was MOF officials who took immediate action without any pushback. It was the 1MDB board who treated his instructions as binding when they could have escalated or resigned like some other board members did. It was banks and compliance officers who processed the transfers without stopping to consider why a private individual with no official role was giving them instructions. Or another thing is, yes, you could see it as Najib abusing his power as prime minister to shield himself from accountability. After all, he fired the attorney general who was about to bring charges against him. He fired the MACC chief who was investigating the scandal, and he kicked the deputy prime minister at the time, Muhyiddin Yassin, and Mukhris Mahathir out of UMNO for speaking up against him in public. Or you can look at these as more examples of the people around him falling in line and letting him get away with all of the shit he pulled. Because it was the new Attorney General after that, Apani Ali, who cleared him of any wrongdoing in regard to the 2.6 billion ringgit found in his bank account. It was the then head of investigation and current chief of the MACC, Azam Baki, who confirmed they met the guy that supposedly donated that money to him. It was also every other member of the cabinet backing him at the time, Azalina Othman, Johari Ghani, Zai Hamidi, Kari Jamaluddin, saying he did nothing wrong. And then again, of course, you can look at this as an example of how one guy lied to an entire country and did everything he could to try and cover up his crime. He lied about the 2.6 billion coming from some Arab donor. He lied about Jolo having any role in 1MDB. He shut down media outlets and arrested whistleblowers who tried to get information out to the public about what was going on. But just like the others, you can also look at these examples of how his supporters kept making excuses for him despite everything. Because through it all, UMNO members were standing by him, past politicians were defending him, BN voters kept supporting him up till this day even. So again, you could look at everything that happened as option 1, one guy pulling off the greatest financial scandal that's ever taken place on the face of this earth all by himself. Or option 2, you could look at it as the entire network of government officials, politicians, and members of the public, people like you and me, allowing him to do what he wanted at the expense of an entire country. And that's what I mean when I say I see him as a victim. Not to say that he's not guilty or that he doesn't deserve his sentence, but instead to say maybe if things had gone differently, if he'd been told no earlier on, or if someone had just stopped him at any step of the way, maybe he wouldn't have been sentenced to another 15 whole ass years in prison. And I feel like this is important because if the lesson we take away from this is Najib's bad, Najib's jailed, therefore case closed, but then nothing actually changes, like the Prime Minister still holding the post of the Finance Minister, the Prime Minister still holding the power to appoint the Attorney General and the Chief of the MACC, and the Prime Minister is still having supporters who stand by him no matter what. How sure are we that something like this scandal won't ever happen again in the future?